jumping in the chat. I'm in New Jersey. It's a very cloudy day here. It's been super weird weather, and it's supposed to be 95 degrees on Saturday. So take a second, tell me, it looks like we've got people from Minneapolis, Seattle, Missouri. Everyone just jump in, and it's nice to meet. Ooh, Toronto, Canada, very exciting. Frame of Mind Coaching, which I'll be talking about, is in Toronto, so fun fact. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, I have the 3 learning objectives, but before we even get to number 1, you can see there's a poll up, and I wanted to see of the group here, how many people manage at least one person. So while I'm talking, if people can take a moment to answer. And it looks like we've got, so far I'm seeing a pretty good 50-50, maybe more managers, or which is perfect, because if you're not a manager now and you're not leading, you can benefit from this just in how you can grow, but even more so, someday hopefully you will grow and lead other people, which is the whole point of coaching. So before we get to the 3 steps, the first thing I'm going to go over in this course is the why. Once we've discussed the why, I'm going to talk about how to set up a coaching program in your organization. After that, I'm going to go through how coaching can help employees achieve their company and individual metrics. Then we're going to round it up by how coaching can transform your performance management process. So I'm excited. I hope you are. And like Megan said, if a question comes up, put it in the chat. If not, we can talk at the end. Oh, actually, I forgot one thing. Before we start, if everyone can take a moment and think to put into the chat and answer, like think about for a second, what are some of the one big struggle that either somebody you're coaching now or managing now has, or that you're having? And if we can just take a minute, if people can throw things into the chat, and I will take notes on it and try to integrate it throughout the program. Disengagement and burnout, that is a very common one. Thank you, Melanie. Time management, yes. I think almost everybody can agree to that. See if there's one more or 2 more, I'll give it a second. Hybrid workplace. Not enough time to learn, which could also be time management. Lack of a follow-up on tasks. Great, we're gonna be talking about all of these things today. So thank you guys for taking the time. This is a great setup. All right, so here are 2 of my favorite quotes about coaching. The first one is by Bobby Umar, who's an inspirational speaker and coach. He starts off by saying, good leaders develop ideas. Great leaders develop people, but the best leaders develop new leaders. And then the second quote, which has meant so much to me when I'm trying to learn how to be a better leader and how to be a better coach, is that amazing leaders are amazing coaches. And that's Kim Addis, who runs the external coaching program that we work with. So before we dive in, I want to tell you a little bit about Lawline's story and how we started coaching. About 7 years ago, we were having a problem on our leadership team. We had a CEO and our former COO, who's no longer with us, but we had a CEO and a COO, and team members didn't know who to go to get the answers. We actually didn't know who was the one making the decisions. And the secret is, even among the CEO and COO, they were getting confused who was in charge of what. So we brought in an executive coach and we said, fix our leadership team. We're having a problem where employees are confused about who to go to for what answers. And we expected some very specific leadership exercises. And our coach, Mark Green, our executive coach who we work with, he did say you have a real trust problem in your leadership team. But his solution surprised us. He said, what we need to do is work on our alignment as a company. And the first and most important thing to do with that was to set up one-on-one weekly coaching with every single manager and report. So that all the way from the top down, whoever manages you, you meet with every week. We said, no way, we don't have that time. we're already swimming here, like drowning, I should say. You know, we're working on our product, our customers, our sales. Like, how can we? I have 3 to 5 reports. How can I have a meeting with each one each week? And Mark stopped us and he said, as a leadership team, the most important thing for you to focus on is not your product, it's not your sales, and it's not your customer service. It's your people. If you're focusing on your people and alignment and building trust, all the other things will follow. And as you can see, that is exactly what best leaders develop new leaders said. So we took Mark's advice, we started doing one-on-ones, and we realized we were becoming more aligned. And we did this for about, I want to say 4 to 5 years. It was going pretty well. We knew exactly who to go to. We knew who was accountable, and everyone knew what everyone was doing, and essentially the status of moving forward in projects. But we took a pause because we realized something was missing. We definitely did the one-on-ones, and we were aligned, but we didn't really feel like we were doing true coaching for growth. And we stepped back and we had to reflect on what we needed to change. And that's when we reached out to a different source, and we started working with Frame of Mind Coaching and realized that we had to work on our meetings focusing on employee growth, not just alignment, and take away the status updates. So instead of checking in on things, that tip came completely out, and really work on focusing on how our employees and how to help them and think the right way to grow and succeed for themselves and for the company. So as you can see, our story relates really well to these 2 quotes, because first we became leaders developing new leaders, and the next step is we became leaders who are coaches. Okay. So first thing is, can we take a second, is we established about 50% of us, or a little more, are managers. Does anyone think of themselves right now as actually coaching somebody else or being coached? Okay, amazing. I'm seeing so many people who are seeing themselves as coaches or having participated in it. Great, thank you guys. One second. I'm gonna get this. Got a little preview of additional coming slides. All right, so there are 4 main reasons why you guys as CLE professionals should embrace coaching. Number 1, retention. We all know about the great resignation going on now. And what's so interesting about it is employees are leaving their jobs who are doing really well. They're meeting all of their goals, and they're even saying that they're actually happy with the compensation packages they're receiving. But when they're asked, and this has been a repeated thing for many years in studies, when they're asked why they're leaving, they say it's because their leaders aren't focused on them growing. They're not focused on them becoming more independent, and they're not challenging them to grow into a different level. So if we want our employees to stay and grow with us, we need to help them grow within the organization. So retention is a huge reason to embrace coaching, and coaching, we'll discuss how coaching can help with retention. Second, coaching helps employees recognize their own worth. When you're tasked with a project and that your manager sees that you're not doing it right, and instead of helping you figure it out, just jumps in to figure it out, it's demoralizing. It makes you feel like you don't have the ability to do it. And even more so, it actually takes away from a manager who should be focusing on more impactful projects. So essentially, when you're not coaching and you're just jumping in, you're taking away employees' self-worth, and in the flip side, by coaching them and helping them, you're going to help them recognize it and grow and want to stay with you. The third thing is alignment. Now, I tell you about our story before. We were so misaligned, and maybe in your situations, it's not going to be that extreme. But we did bring up even just like alignment and the why and deadlines and following up. And coaching allows for a time where you can meet and really discuss, help your team member understand the bigger picture and how they're doing connects and who is accountable, the problem that we were having. So retention, employees recognizing their own worth, alignment. Okay, the fourth one, which I love, is CLE professionals should embrace coaching for leadership growth. And here I'm actually talking about the coach. So we have a saying at Lawline that I'm sure many of you guys do, is when we speak to our faculty and we try to sell them on a course, we say, teaching is the best form of learning. Now I'm gonna put a little twist on that. And I would like to argue that coaching is the best form of growing yourself. Because when you're helping others with their own struggles, not only do you become a better leader by leading others, but it also actually helps you reflect upon your own issues and how you can improve them. So why should you embrace it? Retention, employees recognize their own worth, alignment, leadership growth. All right. So I think we're all on board. We've all realized we have struggles. We understand the why. And you want to know, well, how do I do this? And before I get to that, I even want to add one more. For those who are like data people, I've given you the intangible reasons, but a specific data reason for us is in the past 2 years, since we've doubled down on coaching for growth, we've promoted 10 employees into new roles that were more leadership roles. And that was double the number we had done in previous years when we were not focusing as much on the mindset. Okay. So now I've gotten you on board with the why. And let's talk about the how. So the first thing is, like I said, to set up weekly recurring meetings. These should only be 30 minutes. And you will actually realize that having a 30-minute set to talk with your reportee or your manager every week will actually save you time. You'll see how many times you were having side conversations or trying to get in touch with someone by email or Slack, because you're gonna know that every meeting, every week, there's gonna be a time set aside. And I have to say, as an employee, it's a beautiful thing. You always know there's a time you can go to your manager with something that you need for help. And so really, first step, find a time on your schedule that works for you and each person on your team. Second step, super important, do the right pre-meeting preparation. We went through many iterations of this, and I'm going to show you an example of how we do it. But mostly it's preparing ahead of time, almost like a journal entry. If you've done coaching and you know journaling, in journaling, the reason you would journal before you meet with your coach is to be able to dive deep when you actually meet with them. So when you're able to identify either the manager or the person being coached, what the stucks are or the wins or the learning that you want to address, once you get into the weekly meeting, you can go dive even deeper. So second is important pre-meeting preparation. And then this part is the most important. Create the right environment for good coaching conversations. And there's really one thing you need to know to create the right environment. And that is what we were missing when we were having our issue with our CEO and our COO. And it's a really important word. I'm sure you've used it many times, and it's trust. So the most important thing in order for it to be successful for an employee to grow is that you create an environment where there's a trust relationship between the coach and the coachee. And I am going to now tell you, first I'm going to take a look at the Q&A. Okay, good. So the questions come in is, what's the difference between managing and coaching? And I actually see managing is what we were talking about with alignment. It helps managers help employees know what they need to do. They help them connect them and align them, but they don't get them to the next level. They're not focusing on helping the employee figure out how to grow themselves and how to do everything independent so that they're on track for leadership. So managing is only one part. and coaching takes them to the next level, that helps them grow and helps them actually become the one who is leading it. We use a laddership. We use something called, and I'll go to my next slide. It's called the ladder of leadership. And this is an example, which I'm going to go through, of our coaching board. But one leadership technique we use is ladder of leadership. And you go through it, and the first thing you're doing is you're asking a question, like, can I do this? How do I do this? I intend to do this. I will do this. And so the difference between managing and coaching is when you're coaching, you're getting the person to the end to say, I did this, instead of always going to the manager to really understand the why and the how. Okay, good question. What does alignment mean to me? Alignment means that we all understand who's accountable, and we understand we're having the right conversations in that, like, I'm going to get to this in a little bit, but it's is the employee doing the right thing to meet their goals? So someone can be really busy and think they have a time management issue, but they really have an issue with how they're thinking about time management, because they don't know what's most important to their function, to their role, and to their company. And the coach's job is to provide the guidance to say, this is what you need to, this is how you should prioritize. And it's the coach's job to give the why, and it's the coach's job to help connect them to everyone else on the team. So in my mind, that's how I see alignment for now. And if anyone else has any other ideas, feel free to jump in on the chat. So what we're looking at here, this is my coaching board with one of my team members, my business operations manager. When you look to the left, you'll see it's a link to her scorecard. And I'm going to talk to you about what a scorecard is and how a scorecard can really help with alignment specifically in a coaching session. You can also see I have the quarterly check-ins, which I'm going to talk about as well, which are the performance management that can be used throughout coaching, so we can refer to it. I have 2 leadership exercises that if something comes up, I like to pull it up so we can talk about it, and that's locus of control and ladder of leadership. And we have a column where whatever she's learning about, she's listing the course so we can refer to that. But this is the most important thing of our pre-preparation on this board. You'll see here Michelle to discuss and Alyssa to discuss. What you don't see is the name of a project. You don't see the name of a CLE program. You don't see a faculty name, because this is not a project management board. This is not a workflow. This is just for each of us to bring up what's like a win or an area of improvement or something specific that's going on for them, but not for us to talk about an entire project. Okay. And then before I get to the next slide, I just want to add that the question is, like, in sometimes, who runs a coaching session? Now, if somebody wants to grow and learn and really be able to deal with the things that are challenging them, they're the ones who have to drive it. But I also want to emphasize that while it's driven by the employee, it's just important that the manager be equally involved in leading the sessions to make sure that you're able to tell your employee when you want to give them either the positive or critical conversations type feedback, or when they're not focusing on the right things. So it's I would say it's 50-50 on who's the one who leads the coaching. Okay. So I've told you about why we started coaching. I've given you the why you're doing it, why everyone should do it, how to set it up. And then I told you that, like, I was going to let you know how to create those comfortable conversations, the place where you can comfortably discuss issues with each other. And that is building trust. So here, now I'm going to go through the 5 qualities of successful coaches and ways to build trust. So the first one is be curious. And be curious is all about asking questions. So you have somebody who's dealing with disengagement and burnout. And what you're not going to do right away is say, okay, here are the things you need to do. Go meditate, take an hour off, or actually stop working on this. You want to ask your employee question after question. What is it that you feel you're not getting to? What does burnout mean to you? What are your goals this week? What are your goals this month? What's going on at home? And keep asking them until they get to the point where they realize how they can help themselves. Usually anyone asks, like when you're listening to a question, you're asking it over and over again, what you're really doing is helping them get to the place to help themselves, or you're getting to the place where that you can nudge them to the answer. The second really important quality for building trust is be vulnerable. We're all human. We're all making mistakes. We're all suffering or now used to either remote learning or hybrid environment. And I would say, so more than any time before in the past 2 years, being vulnerable has been helpful as we're all in these shared experiences. And I'll give another example. My HR generalist recently did an offer letter and made a small mistake. And she came to me and she was like fixated on the mistake, and over again, she kept talking about it. And what I stopped and I said to her is, you don't know from mistakes. Years ago, I had an offer letter that I copied from another offer letter, a previous one, and I had sent it, it came back and it was signed. And it wasn't until I had it signed and was entering it into payroll when I realized that I had given a higher salary than what was agreed to in the letter and what we had budgeted for. It was already signed and the employee thought that's what they were offered. And I couldn't go back. And yeah, I beat myself up a little about it. And then I said, like, this is even better. The employee feels they're better about their worth, and they would have grown into it anyways. And when I told the story, it was not to say, like, look at me making mistakes, or look, I got through a mistake. It was to make her feel more connected to me. And right away, her face changed. She smiled, she appreciated it, and she thanked me for the share. And she was no longer fixated on what didn't go wrong, but of all the other things that had gone wrong in that situation. So be curious, be vulnerable, be transparent. Be transparent goes a lot back to being on alignment, and the main reason is giving the why. Sometimes as leaders, we think it's easier to keep some information because it prevents people from asking too many questions. And the truth is, we don't always have the answers. And then when they ask the questions, we have to try to come up with all the answers. But what I've learned in coaching is that giving the why of everything is the most important thing. And this is an example, not from coaching, but just of transparency. Recently at Lawline, 2 weeks ago, we were supposed to go on a 3-day company retreat in Connecticut. We had people flying in, people driving in, and like 15 hours before, we had some COVID spikes among our employees and in our area. We made the decision that we had to postpone it and cancel it. We sent out a Slack and an email, and we knew people would be really upset. And so we just, the leadership team went on Zoom for an hour, and we let people come in, and we went through everything that happened that led us to our decision. And once we did that, people thanked us and said they were really disappointed, but like hearing our thought process made them appreciate how much we put into keeping them safe. So be transparent will always help with any kind of leadership, but specifically for coaching. Number 4, be an active listener. This is so important for a good coaching relationship. In order for the person you're coaching to believe that you care, you need to 100% be engaged with them when you're coaching them. That means if you're on Zoom, you need to close everything. Turn off all your notifications, your Slack, your email, your instant message. If you're in person, keep your phone in your pocket, close your laptop. Do whatever it is so that they know that you're actively listening to them. And this one is my favorite because it's so hard for me. It's be comfortable with pauses. Now, silence is difficult for me. I'm speaking to no one now, but in general, when I'm with people, if there's silence, I usually want to talk. So when I'm coaching, I have to fight with every being when something comes up and I either ask a question or I can see that the person I'm coaching is thinking about something, to keep myself quiet for as long as possible. And when I do that, I'm not exaggerating when I say magic happens. People need time to think and contemplate, and giving them the space to do that can be huge for growth and for building trust. So, top 5 qualities: be curious, be vulnerable, be transparent, be an active listener, and be comfortable with pauses. What else, Michelle, you're asking me? Yeah, these sound great, but I feel like I need a little more. Okay, I got you. Here are some bonus tips. The first one is to be focused on employee thoughts in achieving the results, not just the outcomes. So you'll remember when I showed you the Trello board, I said that I highlighted how it wasn't the outcome, the achieving goal that was listed, but really just Michelle to discuss, Alyssa to discuss, because I want to know her thoughts in something. And we talked about an employee, one of you brought up an issue of employee not having enough time to learn. So really, is it that you want to ask them, what are their, like, why is it that they think they don't have enough time to learn? What is the goal of learning? And focus on that. And usually if you ask over and over again of the evidence, like, well, I can't do this, the people start looking at it and they realize that often they think something can't happen, and then they don't actually have the evidence to prove it. And whether it's that issue or even just somebody who's speaking in public right now, like myself, I always say that I hate public speaking, and I don't ever want to do it, and I don't think I do a good job. But every time I do it, it seems to work out. Hopefully it's working out today as well. And so when I'm being coached, I'm saying stop focusing on that it's the outcome, that it won't go well, and what are my thoughts about it, and why is it that I think it? And when I realize and I look at the evidence, it doesn't support it from my previous times. So be focused on your employee thoughts in achieving the results, not the outcomes. Your second bonus tip: be aware of your own story and biases. And for this, I'm going to bring in an example from Grey's Anatomy. I don't know if there are any other Grey's Anatomy fans. If you are, I'm with you. And I was watching an episode last week, and it was about a attending doctor and their residents. And the residents were, saying that they couldn't work all the time. They needed work-life balance and time off and time to sleep. And the attending came in and was like, when I was a resident, I went 3 days without sleep, and I got everything done, and did not want to listen to the feedback they were giving because of what they had been through. And then another attending said, check yourself, pretty much. That's your bias. But actually, it was terrible that we didn't sleep for 3 days. And it took me years to get over that. And by the end of the episode, they realized their own biases were stopping them from giving the right guidance and leadership. So I say that, not just to shout out Grey's Anatomy, going after so many years, still going, but also, like, as a coach and a leader, we walk into every conversation usually having some kind of connection of our own story and biases. So do your best to, if you can't check them at the door, sometimes just be honest about them and share them, so that you can say, I might have a bias, but here's my feedback. So the final bonus tip is to be a vehicle to show your employees that they're able to keep their commitments. And I think there was someone who wrote, I'm trying to look at my notes early on, of someone who the deadlines are set and following up with them to make sure that they complete them. And if I'm saying that wrong, feel free to go in the chat and tell me how to say it. But that's the example I'm going to use. Is it's not your job. It's your job to provide, like I said, the alignment. Like, this project is due on this date, but it is not your job as a coach to check in with them and say, remember, this project is due at this date. 3 days later, have you been working on this project? 5 days later, checking in with email. 6 days later, just seeing how it's going. That's not a coach and a leader, but it's your job to tell them that they have the ability to figure out how to keep the commitment on their own. So you're showing them they're able versus holding them accountable. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that soon. Okay. So I feel like I've convinced you guys now. Told you our story, I gave you the whys, I showed you how. You now know how to build trust. You're ready to go back to your organization and say, okay, let's do this. Let's set it up. And you're like, if I only had a quick list to hand out. So here it is. 6 coaching do's. Number 1, like we said, use the 30 minutes to align on team members' wins and stucks from the previous week. Number 2, discuss learning opportunities for growth. What LinkedIn learning courses can they take? What other skills? What conferences? Are there actually projects going on at your company that would really help them expand their skills that they can be added to? This is a great conversation for coaching. Number 3, and I mentioned this before when we were talking about alignment, ensure employees are focused on the right things. You can be really busy, but not focusing on what you need to do in order to achieve your scorecard goals, your KPIs, your OKRs. And then number 4 dovetails into this is the why, the transparency. Your job as a coach and a leader is to help your employees who you're coaching understand how what they're doing on a day-to-day basis connects to all of these things, and I'm going to go through them as well. Number 5, share your own personal stories and struggles. I told you about how I did that and how we can all do that with our team members when we have like-minded issues that we've overcome or not. And number 6, drum roll, which now we pretty much know after I told you about our journey that being able to focus on your employees' mindset is the most important in order to have them get to the next level of growth and become a leader themselves. Okay, so we've got the 6 coaching do's. I have a simple list of don'ts to remember. Do not provide a do. Go walk into your coaching and say, here is a to-do list of all of the ways an employee, here's a to-do list of all the ways that you should complete your tasks. And an important word here is should. Because if I'm coming in and telling my team member how they should do it, I've just taken the away from them my belief in the fact that they can do it. Don't take that control away from your employees. Number 2, and I've said this before, don't use your coaching, don't use your 30 minutes for status updates on projects. Now I know there's going to be a situation where you're going to be in a department meeting on Monday and you're going to have your coaching's on Tuesday and you're just going to want to ask one question about a certain project. And you don't have to wait a week. Resist. Your employees will thank you, their growth will thank you, and the overall company success will thank you. And frankly, there's probably a lot of other ways you can get the information. Either we use Trello for project management, sending an email, sending a Slack, but don't use your coaching session because once you start, you can't stop with that. And then the 3rd thing, which I mentioned in the end of the previous discussion, is don't hold employees accountable for deadlines. What you actually should be doing is saying, I know you can do this. I know you can meet this deadline. I know you have the ability to meet this goal. And I'm going to shine a positive light on your abilities to do so. So those are the 3 coaching don'ts. Okay. What is this focus on employee mindset that you mentioned? What is it that makes the difference from the question of what's just managing and what is coaching? So there's 4 ways that I like to think about for employee mindset. The first is monitoring their mood. You walk into a coaching session and you say to your team member, how are you today? And if we were in public, I'd say, what's the answer? And you would say, fine. You walk into a coaching session and you ask your team member, what is your mood today? They don't answer right away. When someone asks you your mood, you pause, you think. And what happened to me, not recently, but in a coaching session was the person actually answered, actually my mood is I'm pretty overwhelmed. I'm planning my wedding, I'm moving, I've got a lot going on at work, and I've got my honeymoon coming up. Wow, until you asked me this question, I didn't I didn't realize how overwhelmed everything was making me feel. And I didn't say, okay, thanks for sharing. Let's move on to the next topic in our pre-discussion. I said, okay, let's deal with this. And we spent 30 minutes talking about how I could help and detailing whether it was in her personal or professional of how I could help her relieve her from feeling so overwhelmed. So that's number one. Number two, personal and professional goal setting. In order to know how to help somebody grow, you need to know where they want to go. So for example, you hire 2 web developers at equal level. Your first week of coaching with them, you ask them, what are their professional goals? One tells you, in 5 years, I want to be director of engineering. Great. You know how to help this person get to what they need, the projects to give, the experience to give, and you can help them even align mindset-wise when they're not in the right place because you know their goals. If they're doing things that are against their goals, you can help them focus. The other developer says, I never want to be a manager. So in 5 years, I'm at level 1 of a web developer now. I want to be at level 4. Great. Now you've started from the beginning and you can help in the different way in coaching this person. Similarly, why do I have personal here? Because we're always one person. We're the same person when we're at work as we are at home, unless another TV reference of a show I just started, which is Severance, where they actually make your memory into absolutely 2 different people. So you can also ask, and if an employee wants to share what their personal goals are for moving to the suburbs, getting married, different things, having more flexibility, and help them with that. Okay, I see a question coming in. In your experience, do you also have separate meetings with your teams about sensitive work content in addition to these 30-minute weekly sessions? Yes, and thank you for asking me that. So the way that I would do it is I have one-on-ones with each team member, but the entire department has a weekly meeting for department. So as a team, we can talk about everything, which I also think collaboration is so important, and I'd rather, if we're discussing an issue, have us all discuss it together and we can help each other. But that helps us move forward projects, which is separate from the coaching. So I think that should answer that. Okay. Thank you for the questions. I love getting them. Personal and professional relationships. So the third part to help you focus on your employee's mindset. Michelle, I'm not a therapist. I'm their manager. Okay, you've gotten me on board with being their coach, but why do you want me to help them with their personal relationships? And you're definitely not their therapist, not at all. But like I said, we're one person, and what I found is so interesting is that usually if somebody has a role or a way they are in their personal life, it's going to reflect how they handle their professional relationships. And so when you're helping them, and with it's knowing all the information can only help more for work. So an example of this is a team member you ask them about their relationships and they tell you about at home, they realize they're the person who organizes everything. They're the person who makes the decisions, make sure the schedules, the dinners, the friends, and they're always worried about everybody in the family. And they stepped back and then they said, wow, at work, I actually am doing the same thing, but I don't want to. I feel like I've been so focused on everybody on the team and always pitching in that I haven't actually focused on my own growth or even in sharing and being proud of my own accomplishments. And once this person was able to make the change, both in how realizing who they wanted to be, it helped them both in their personal and professional relationships. So you're the same person. Okay. Another question. Do you have any strategies or ideas for team members who seem hesitant to share or usually don't like to elaborate on how things are going outside of work? So I think that you can only always meet someone where they are. And I think the questions that always don't have to be so deep. They can more be like, tell me something going on that you really enjoyed over the weekend, or how are things going? Are you watching any TV shows, or reading books or talk about Grey's Anatomy. So usually when you start these like softball questions, people become more comfortable. So essentially you're asking these questions because you want to help them and you want to grow them. But often if people aren't comfortable sharing yet, it's because you haven't gotten to the trust level yet. And so working on all these different trust areas, from going backwards, trying to, being curious, being vulnerable, being transparent, sharing your own stories, giving time for pause, usually will help them become more comfortable and start talking about, I would start talking about the easier things first and then dive deeper. But at the end of the day, if they don't want to at all, then you can't do anything more than that, or you can refer them to other external resources. So thank you for that question. So the fourth thing, and I brought this up before, is in mindset, is challenging the beliefs that do not serve them. And in here, I'm going to go a little vulnerable and tell my own personal story with my coach and a belief that I had that didn't serve me. And so I've been working at Lawline for 14 years. I've also been working with and for my brother, who's the CEO. If anybody has worked with family in any capacity, you know that it comes with challenges. And I started working with an external coach during the beginning of the pandemic. I was having a lot of different struggles, as we all were. And I said, well, I'm two different people. At home, we're siblings, and when we work, we're colleagues. And my coach looked at me and said, is that really how it is? And is that working for you? And I stepped back. She gave me time to pause and think. And I realized, no, it's not the truth, because we were overlapping and, acting like siblings at work and colleagues at home. And it also was like causing tension between us. And the moment she told me and challenged my belief and made me realize that same person in both places, it improved our communication and improved my happiness when we were together as a family and at work. And it's gotten me to the place of, I would say, chief people officer, which is where I wanted to be. And only because I was able to recognize the beliefs that weren't serving me. Okay, 15 minutes, perfect. So I mentioned scorecard before. Scorecard is a document which includes a position's mission, outcomes, KPIs, and competencies. What does this have to do with coaching? Here's an example of our senior developer scorecard at Lawline. So you're in a coaching session, you're the director of engineering, and you're coaching your developer, and they're struggling so much. They've been trying for months to get this accessibility feature on the website to work. And they're beyond themselves and they have so many struggles, and you stop and you pause and you say to them, what you're doing of making the site more accessible for all attorneys is completely fulfilling your mission of executing on high-level feature development and product improvement. You're doing exactly what you need to do to get to the outcome of projects are completed in alignment with and meeting quality standards. You're working on your KPIs of having requirements for functionality and technical implementation. And you can do this because the reason that we hired you is because you have all of these key competencies. So essentially, alignment means helping them see how what they're doing is exactly what they should be doing for their role goals. The second thing we do is in alignment is KPIs. KPIs are the measure of what is necessary for the core quality of business or business as usual. So my HR person is in a coaching session and she's exhausted. We're hiring for 4 positions. She's been in interviews every half hour for 4 days in a row. I thank her for everything she's doing, and I tell her how all of these interviews she's having are helping us hit our KPI of 60 days average time to hire. And not only that, but helping every other department meet their own KPIs because she's getting them the employees they need. And then finally, alignment on OKRs. We just started OKRs this year, and they are the most important thing a company needs to propel the business forward. So essentially, you're in a coaching session with an accreditation team member who is just like overwhelmed and talking about all the things she needs to do that are making her exhausted with reporting all the time. And you say, like, appreciate what she's doing, and you say, our objective is to get our accreditation processes to be expanded to be customer facing for law firm use. And the key result, you're on your way. You're almost there of average day from completion to reporting decreases to 3 days. And that's because of everything you're doing. So these coaching sessions are helping them stay connected and understand, and also part of something bigger, which is we all need. So core values, why do I have this here? Core values for us are the most important thing that will get you from your thoughts to your outcomes. They bring you together, they help make the sandwich, and for us, these are our 5 core values that guide us. But what they really do is for act, play, care, create, and grow. We hire on these core values. We will not hire someone, even if they have every single skill level they need for the position, if they don't also embrace our 5 core values, because that's who we are as a company. And that's how we work together to achieve our goals. And if you can't also have our core values, it's not going to help you grow at our company and achieve what we all want to do. And essentially, we also fire for core values, and that's how it's important to us. So if I mention coaching, I will always, in my coaching conversations, tell my team member when they're either, I'll shout them out when they've embraced a core value and are really living it, but I will also have a crucial, critical conversation when they're not and when they're violating them, and that helps them grow. Okay, so the final thing I said I was going to tell you about was coaching for performance management. We have completely turned our review process upside down. We used to have once a year reviews, and then we had twice a year reviews. Guess what? It wasn't enough, and it felt like disconnected from our coaching. So what we realized is we're really doing performance management every week in our coaching sessions. And we still want to do it on a quarterly basis where we, 2 of the quarters, we have evaluations completed, and 2 of the quarters, we read all the things and review the progress from the previous quarters. But really, our goal of our check-ins is the same as our goal of weekly coaching. Is the employee on the right track? How do I help boost their productivity? How do I make sure that I am on the same page as my leader or as my team member? And I always say to whatever kind of reviews we've been doing, I've always said, if something comes up in a review or a check-in that has never been mentioned in a weekly coaching session, you're not coaching right. Because if you're waiting, that means the trust does not exist until somebody thinks they're in a review and have to give the feedback. You should be able to be giving critical feedback on both sides every week when needed. Number 4 is identifying where team members need additional support. And number 5 is if there is an underperformance, providing specific benchmarks. So I've pretty much taken you through the entire process. And this is sort of a cherry on top if you want to do. You've set up your own internal coaching program. You're helping your leaders build the trust. You're focusing on your employees' mindset and your alignment. And then you go to the next level, which is what we've done. We have every member of our senior leadership team participate in a 10-week, very intensive journaling and one-on-one coaching with an external coach. This helps them do everything they're trying to help with their own team members, dive deep, and having an impartial party who is not connected to the company makes a huge difference. It also helps them elevate their own coaching skills. You can also go to even further, as Megan mentioned in the beginning, and I became certified in the coaching methodology because I love it, but also so I can help internally train my coaches and continue to grow them. And now what we've done and what we've added to it is all of our team members are offered external coaching options where they have memberships in an online journal program that's also supported by an online coach. And I will say that journaling has been the one thing people have been the most resistant to. And in fact, I'm actually, as I'm saying this, I see Svetlana Glakin for my organization. She's saying that she had a positive experience with the Journal That Talks Back and asking me what was my most valuable part of journaling related to my coach. Thank you. Essentially for me, it always, when I would start journaling, I would have 50 ideas in my head and I couldn't feel focused. Journaling helped focus me and help calm me. So when I got into the sessions with my coach, I knew exactly where I needed the help the most. So that is an additional thing you can do. So essentially, what have we covered today? We talked about how coaching of your team members promotes retention, growth, and success, how easy it is to set up a weekly coaching program, what are the 5 top qualities of successful coaches. We did a detailed overview of the scorecards, KPIs, OKRs, and their connection to coaching. We talked about how coaching is connected to performance management, and then finally, the benefits of external coaching programs for leaders and all team members. And so, I think after everything you've learned, I go back to these quotes, which hopefully resonate with you more now. Good leaders develop ideas, great leaders develop people, the best leaders develop new leaders, and amazing leaders are amazing coaches. And now I will click on my Q&A. Are there prompts in this journaling, and what do you journal about? Great question. In the 10-week program and the Journal That Talks Back, there are prompts. And they really talk about all of the things that I would mention. Is they ask about goals, they ask about relationships, you spend a lot of time talking about beliefs. What are your beliefs about yourself and your own abilities, and people in your life? And there's one exercise which is my favorite, which I'll share, and it's called the unique ability exercise. And you're supposed to go to the people who know you the most in your life, and you send them an email and you say, I'm doing this exercise with coaching, and I've been asked to ask the people who know me the best to describe what is my unique ability, what do you see as the most special thing that I provide? And essentially, it is a beautiful thing. You hear from all these people in your life of how they see you, but the trick is often how you're seen, even if it's being said in the most complimentary way, isn't how you see yourself or how you want to be seen. And that's what happened with me when I did the exercise. Everybody was talking about how I was so organized and great at tasks, and I was such a good listener, and everything I did was described of how I was with other people. Such a great mom, great daughter, but it didn't really represent who I wanted to be, which is more creative, innovator, leader, and that helped guide me in how I was having my relationships. Any other questions? Okay.
Michelle, thank you so much for a really engaging presentation. I learned a lot, and I'm sure others did too. I do have a couple of additional questions just to ask you very quickly if you have,
Sure.
if you're willing. One question is, let's see. How do you coach an employee who does not want to be vulnerable with you and doesn't want to share thoughts on their goals? Like, what are some key things that you can do with those? They just do not want to engage with you in that way.
Yeah, and I appreciate that question. And I came up before of what happens when they don't want to share their personal stuff. But it's also, I do think that if somebody doesn't want to focus on their goals, then that's a problem with their ability to grow in the organization. And that's why coaching's not just about helping employees. In my mind, coaching is the most important thing for Lawline to grow. And we want to continue to be successful and hit our revenue goals and have the best programs. We need employees who constantly want to figure out, they need to feel when I'm interviewing, people always say, what's the number one quality you look for? And I was like, somebody who wants to feel like an owner. If you feel like an ownership of what you're working on, then you're committed to the company and you're committed to your growth. So I always do still say, and I'll reiterate what I said before, is you meet someone where they are, but they need to give you something to help them.
have another question that just came in. What do you do when you have a team member who doesn't feel confident in their abilities? What are some practical ways to help them see the best in themselves?
Thank you. So that is really about focusing on the evidence. And so essentially, if somebody, like I mentioned before, doesn't want to speak in a meeting because they don't think what they have to say is going to be impactful and helpful to others, you can talk about how important your conversations with them. Find the evidence. You were the one who worked on this project. You were the one who solved it. You were the one who knows this area more than anyone. And then you ask them to give you specific reasons why they can't do it. And if the reasons are valid, then great, you know how to coach them. But if they really don't have any evidence, it's usually an eye-opener for them and how they're focusing on the wrong things, not the right things. Or a lot of times people are focusing on things that happened to them 10 years ago, and they're using that as the evidence of why they don't want to lead a team. Something happened in my first job that I had a very negative experience in leading the interns or something like that. And so you have to really focus them on what's happening now and the here and now to help them.
Okay, and then just finally, you had mentioned that that Lawline has external coaching program for their employees. So if you're with an organization that just doesn't have the budget or the wherewithal to provide something like external coaching or certification for someone on their staff, so who can be accountable for properly training people to do these types of techniques and make sure that people who are doing coaching get ongoing support?
Okay, so great question. And I would say the first thing is, if you don't have an external coach or anything like that, the first thing is that the leaders, the top level of the organization has to be bought in. So before you even work on who's doing the training, you need the CEO, the COO, function leaders to understand, give them this presentation, the power of coaching. And then once they're on board, I would say either somebody in the top leadership, or if there's an HR function, can work on their own, do their own learning on coaching. The great thing is now coaching is everywhere, and it's seen as a essential well-being for attorneys and all employees. So you can learn on your own, and then I would say it's the HR department's job to help train the managers and make sure they have all of the tools they need to be coaches.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for this presentation. Thank you to our audience for the great questions and for their engagement. This webinar will be available in archived version on the Acquia Learning Center in about 2 days. We do want to hear from you about how we can improve future webinars and ideas for future topics. So we ask that you complete the brief webinar survey that you find with the archive, and join us in the future. Again, our next webinar will be on the 29th of June, and we're very excited to present that, and more information coming soon. And thank you again. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.